I'm Ruth Craddock.
I'm Rae Davidson. Welcome to Paperback Flicks.
All right. Welcome everybody back for another Paperback Flicks. I'm Ruth Craddock. That person over there is, am I pointing the right way?
Yeah.
Rae Davidson. And we have a guest. This is our first time doing our Indie Author Revolution interview, and we are here with our new friend. Rae, do you want to tell us about your friend here?
So, do you want just our Kaylee? Do you want Rochelle?
I'm fine with whichever.
Okay. So we have our friend Rochelle. She writes under R. Kaylee. We have the Genesis series. Wrong side. Unearth and Descent. You can see I tried so hard to get through it before this.
Oh, sir.
Didn't quite make it, so I don't know the climax yet. I'm like right at that point where everything is like falling apart or falling into place. You don't know yet. That's where I am. So, but yeah, we're here to kind of talk all things indie author with you.
I'm excited.
Sweet.
So I'm not totally sure. We kind of talked about how we're starting this off, but I think we kind of want to start with hearing like you kind of describe the books, kind of describe your work for us.
Okay. Well, it takes place in a city controlled by a rigid government with daily scans. Elora begins to exhibit unnatural abilities, and she must decide if she is going to remain where these new abilities put her at risk, or if she's going to escape into an outside world no one has explored in 400 years. So that's a quick, short, bundled up synopsis of, I guess, where it begins. And then it just really starts to explode and unravel, when you get through book one and then into book two and then book three, everything is just building on each other. And the funny thing about these books is I wrote them in 2000. I started plotting them in 2010. And then I actually submitted them to several agents, probably about over 60 agents, to get representation, and nothing happened. They fell through the cracks, a lot of rejections. And so I kind of put it on the back burner. And then fast forward, I felt like I needed to revisit them. And so my husband said, well, why don't you just publish them on your own? And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. So I tried again. I went through and kind of revamped them and tried again and submitted them to agents. Still some rejections. And so finally I was like, okay, I'm going to try this indie thing and kind of explore it and see what happens. So now I'm releasing my third book this Thursday.
Cool. That's exciting to me because I'm ready for it.
Oh, good. And I have water. I'm glad because I might get scratchy. Nice.
But yeah, so I wanted to ask what got you into writing in the first place?
Yeah, I remember in the second grade, they had young author competitions. I don't even know if they do those anymore. We're like, goodness, it's almost been 20 years since I graduated high school. So we're talking like 30 or so years ago, but I don't even know if they still do them. But I remember just thinking, I'm going to win that because I want to be an author someday. And so anytime there was a little competition at school for that, I would enter it. I have funny little stories that I used to write. They were usually very depressing stories, like everyone dies or like tragedy happens and no one bounces back from it, right? So they were kind of dark, but which is kind of funny, but hence the dystopian, I guess, feel of my books, but I have always wanted to write. And so finally, I think, after high school, I just decided I'm going to write a book. And so I did. My first book, I actually have it. I have it right here. The first book I ever wrote, I plotted it in high school and I plotted it for several years after. And so I spent 8 years plotting this book. It's a fantasy, right? So This is the first one I ever published. It's a fantasy novel. It was 600 pages and then I narrowed it down to like almost 400, but I tried to submit that one too, and rejection. So I have a lot of rejections behind my belt, but I love it so much that I just kept going.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think that's kind of the thing to do. Like, you're not really an author if you haven't been rejected at least a dozen times. If
We'd
not
like to
100.
believe that the first thing we do is just going to be so phenomenal that it's going to knock everyone's socks off. And, we're looking at, I think this is probably Unearth is my fourth book that I've written. And so, takes a while.
Yeah. Well, I remember going to writers conferences, and a lot of people would say, don't ever publish your first book. And I found that rather disturbing. So I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to throw it away. It's like, but I guess their theory was that it would be the worst thing you've ever written. So, don't put it out there. But I think that's silly. It's a part of you and it's part of the process as you grow as a writer. So, but kudos on the fantasy novel as your first novel. I think it does take a minimum of 4 to 8 years to write a fantasy novel because they're so complicated. So that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Like, I know this has been a long process, a long work in progress, but were there things like either in your life or whatever that were inspiring? I know you were saying you've written some darker stuff even when you were younger. Ruth can identify with that, I think, because I read some of her stuff in junior high. But yeah, as I read through it, like sometimes I will, because it's so. When I started reading it, of course, it's 22, but I saw on the thing it was like 2020 when it was printed, I think, and I was like, what timing when the whole world changed, and here the whole world changed. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny because I wrote it in 2010 originally, and so when you're reading through it and you're thinking, oh, how fitting, like when everything started to kind of go downhill, so in 2019 is when I was polishing it up in January of 2019, and it was launching in March to be published on Amazon. And then that's where everything like fell apart. And so, I think from what I hear, a lot of people aren't loving all of the dystopian or the like the virus type books that used to be so hot. They kind of are like, I'm going to take a break from that. So part of me thought this is the worst time ever to publish this, but it's more than like a virus or an infection that's going on, right? So there's much more to it. It starts out very dystopian, but then the sci-fi really starts to kick in book 3. The sci-fi aspect of things is really going to pop out at you in book 3 and then book 4.
Oh,
cool. Yeah, which I'm excited for.
How long of a series are you planning it to be?
Originally, it was 2 books, and then it was supposed to be finished after 3. And when I finally finished book 3, I thought, oh, man, I'm going to have to write another one because it wasn't resolved. And there was no way, like, I did not have it in me to write another 100 pages. I just thought, you know what, we're going to just patch this thing up and publish it and write a 4th book, I guess. And then I do want to have a prequel, especially as you read through and get into book 3 and 4. There's things that go on that in a prequel would be really interesting. And Rae, when you read book 3, you're going to be like, oh, I can see why a prequel would be so fascinating with what characters are there.
Well, already, so it's set 400 years in the future of when this virus that you're talking about actually starts to wreak havoc. And so we already know there's at least a 400-year gap. Also, nobody seems to know what happened that started that 400 years, or the people that know aren't telling you. So like I already, like when you said prequel, I'm like, yay.
Oh, good.
I'm the one that would do that. I
Yeah.
would immediately be like, but I have so many questions. When I said, oh yeah, I'm almost done with second book. My sister, she actually gave me them. So she gave me, my birthday's in March. She gave me this in February. She's like, it's an early birthday present because I know that you should read it. And I'm like, okay. And then we set up this, and I was like, now I need to read the second one. And she's like, I was waiting for another gift giving time to give you the second one. And I'm like, well, so I got them both out of her.
Nice.
You can always give your favorite sister another gift, right?
Right.
You don't need an excuse.
Well, the third one's coming out, so she can get you that one too.
Yeah.
There you go.
And
yeah, but I know. She's like, the one thing, don't give out any spoilers that Rochelle doesn't want you to give out. And I'm like, yeah, that's true, because I totally would. I get excited about things. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and then so-and-so did this. What was that? And I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
In our other podcasts, we talk about movies that are books and movies that are already out there. Like people have read the book, they've seen the film adaptation. We can talk about it, and I don't want to do that here because I don't want to like
Reveal
put it
too
all
much.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, I can tell you that I've had people in their 60s read it, and I think the youngest one I know of that's read it is probably, well, actually my 11-year-old son's reading them. He finished the third one. He got my printed manuscript that he was reading as I was doing final edits, and he's like, do you have more printed off? I'm like, oh yeah, here's 10 pages, So he's 11 and he loved it. And so, and then in between. And so I think you get something different out of it depending on your age, depending on your what you want to really delve into as far as the depth of hidden meanings, or maybe you just want to read it at a surface level. So there's really a lot that you can dive into with them, and then they each just really kind of start to explode. And especially in the third one, your sister Stephanie, she's like, the whole time I'm like, what like it's just surprise after surprise, I think.
yeah, I did this with Ruth a little bit too, because I was a beta. Ruth is also an author, and I beta read for her for a while. And I would do the same thing that I do with Stephanie, where like I like come to, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, does this guy betray them or whatever? And Ruth is like, wait and see. And Stephanie kept doing the same thing to me. She's like, you'll have to wait and see. Keep reading.
Don't wait.
I'm like, I knew it. So I would write down with Ruth, like I would like write down what I thought was going to happen. I'm like, oh,
Try to guess
I bet Gwen goes here. I bet so-and-so does it, whatever. And then I was with Stephanie, I kept texting her. Does this happen? Does so-and-so? I'm putting my guess out there.
Were you ever right?
About half the time.
So I'm able to give some, it's not all laid out in front of you where it's easy to guess. That's good.
Yeah.
It's not, those movies you watch and you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen. This is exactly, how it's going to go. I think that when you're an author, now that I've written a lot more, I think it's easier when I watch movies. I can see when something's planted, even if it's the smallest thing, I can see that and say, oh, they put that there because that's going to come into play later,
Mm-hmm.
So I think you start to notice a lot more foreshadowing or the tiniest little hint of something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find when we watch shows with my kids, I'm always, okay, guys, this is what's going to happen next. I bet you anything. And then like, how did you know? I'm like, I know. It goes with the territory. You do it enough, you go, You just pick it up. So,
Yeah. So when it comes to like character development, I know I might be switching gears here a little bit. I don't even know. It's just the things that come into my head. But when you're like going through, like, do you kind of already kind of have their storylines in mind, or do you just wait and see who they are once you create them? You know?
Well, it's kind of funny because there are some that I do. I mean, how tall are they? What is their hair? Like their features. I do their physical features. Then I do their maybe kind of how they are emotionally or their disposition, what are they usually like? But then there's some characters that I don't plan on. It's called a pantster when you just kind of write by the seat of your pants, which is really, I'm going to not do that for my fourth book because it about killed me for the third one. So when that happens, though, and I'm just like, whoa, like someone just appears out of nowhere and I surprised and where'd you come from? So, and the romance that's in the book, because there's a little romance, it's not so much that a guy would read it and think, oh, this is like a Hallmark gag me, so there's enough there, but even the romance plot, I had planned it to be a certain way. And then all of a sudden things happen and I'm thinking, what the heck? I didn't invite you into this. This is not for you. So it's a little of both, I guess.
Yeah, I like that there's action, but it's not all action. There is a little bit of romance. There's a lot of storytelling so do you I don't know. I've heard other authors will talk about like they wrote all this stuff and then they're like, scrap that. It was a beautiful scene and move on. Do you find yourself running into that? Or not so much anymore?
No, well, I do when I realize I've maybe dug myself into a plot hole or something. Actually, the third book, what I gave to my editor, the notes that she sent back to me, I thought, okay, if I publish this the way it is, it's not going to feel like the story that's meant to be told. And so I changed quite a bit from what I sent over to her. So she's like, I'm going to reread it again. And I thought, well, it's going to be a whole new story, pretty much. So with the third book, yes, I did. So, and I've written 2 books while being pregnant. So, in one pregnancy, I wrote the second and the third book. And that was quite overwhelming, but
yeah. Man, I am relating like a ton to you right now.
Nice.
First off, like with my series that I was doing is originally supposed to be 5 books, and now it's up to 7. But then I had the same thing literally with my third book in my series too, where I was trying so hard to make sure I had a book out every year. So the first 2 books were out a year apart. And then I was just frustrated that I was like, okay, I'm just going to put it out there. And I sent it to my beta readers. One of them said, if you print it like this, I will never read anything you write again. And you will disappoint all your fans. And I was like, ugh. And he's really good advice. I was like, crap. So I had to literally go back and he made some good points. And I was like, oh yeah, there's this whole other side of the story I'm not even telling. So I had to write a whole nother book to graph into the book I'd already written. And 6 years later, it's going to finally come out in the next couple months. So it's like, sometimes you have to do that. And yeah, so I'm right there with you. I relate. This is.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard because as an indie author, because you don't have anything backing you like a traditional author does. I mean, traditional authors, they get to write and that's what they do. They write. Mm-hmm. Everyone else does the marketing and everything else for them, right? The covers and the editing. But when you're an indie author, you're doing everything, right? You're finding your editor, you're finding your formatter and all these things. And so part of me is just like, man, I wish I could just be done with like 2 books. But when I finish the 4th, it'll feel so good for the series to be wrapped up, but it's exhausting thinking I have to write 3 or 4 books a year, because there's some indie authors that put 3 to 6 books out there a year, and I just don't even know how they do it. But
Who are these people? I have a friend, she has 5 kids and she puts out a whole bunch of books all the time. But then I realized her secret is that she has a husband that literally will like take off work for like weeks, and she has this huge like support system where people take her kids.
wow.
Just right. And I'm like, my husband won't do that for me. I don't have anybody to do that for me.
It makes a difference. I know it's a little different too, like having a newborn and a toddler. So I'm kind of lacking right now. It was so overwhelming with this 3rd book that it's coming out, and I just thought I'm going to get burnt out. So I'm taking a bit of a break, and I'm just going to really plot it for the 4th one and, get it out. But I want to also start my clean rom-com series too, so that I'm moving away from some of the dark. Not that my books are dark, but dystopians they kind of have that vibe where it's just a lot of tension, a lot of things are going awry in the world. And so it will be fun to do a clean rom-com where I can just be fluffy and fun, and it'll feel a little bit lighter to write, because these plots take a lot out of you.
All right. So I wanted to ask, I'm all for like a strong heroine, and there's a lot of things I've read where great story, but like the main character wasn't so awesome. So why don't you tell us what makes your lead character so great?
Sure. It's fun because I feel like I've been watching her grow, even though I'm the one writing her, which is probably weird to say that. No, you understand.
Totally normal. Yes.
Yes. So she starts out, it's this world where everyone is very, there's really no emotions. They're just very apathetic, and they don't know any different. And so she is this character that just doesn't seem to have much depth. But the more that the things begin to unravel, and she discovers some secrets, and she has these unnatural abilities that start to come to fruition, she begins to step out of that shell of that rigid environment that's been created for the citizens, is what they're called. So she begins to step out of that. And when she steps out of that, all of a sudden she sees herself as so much more than just someone who works in the fields and is assigned to labor every day. And that's what life is. They wake up, they labor, they get daily scans to make sure they're not sick, and they go to bed. That's their life, and they're assigned everything. And so when she realizes that there's more to life, and she starts to feel things again, all of a sudden this character comes to life, and she just becomes very vibrant. She's a very strong. She doesn't really know how to have compassion or to care about other people. She doesn't know what love is. But throughout the book, she's going to discover all those things. She's going to learn that everyone has value. She's going to learn that she's had preconceived notions about, they're called the elite. She's has preconceived notions about them and how great their life is and how perfect they are. And she learns more about who they really are. So she really grows in the sense of every aspect. She's coming of age. I would say it's a coming of age story, story of courage, self-discovery.
Yeah.
And very strong. She has some fun abilities that start to come out. I think Rae would agree.
No, I was going to say, I like that she continues to grow. So like from, like you were saying, in book 1, it's kind of obvious. Like she is emotionally kind of an infant. Like it is new to her. She becomes kind of a person through book 1. And then in book 2, she expands on what it is to be a person, I kind of feel like.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I actually like your description, and she's your character, so of course, yeah, it's going to be right on. But I can see it when I know sometimes I will be like, here's my intent, but that doesn't necessarily translate into what others get. That's exactly what you get. Like we are watching Elora grow as well. And not just grow like from a child to a more mature, but she's growing from not really understanding what emotion is to being afraid of it. Like fear seems to be the easiest emotion for any of us, and that's kind of where she starts. And then not like she gets the basic emotions in, and then she has to start like figuring out like, okay, so what does this mean then to have emotions on deeper levels? And
Right.
so yeah, I
Right.
like that the character progression continues, because there is sometimes that like book one is a setup. It is. You're setting up the world, whatever, you're setting up the characters. And then sometimes it's like, okay, so we've done that, you know, and the story might move on, but the characters don't necessarily develop anymore. Not the case in this one. So for people like me that like the stories and the character development.
Nice.
Good.
It's funny because one of my favorite characters to write, and maybe I shouldn't say this, I love writing Elora, but I love writing a character named Trevor. He's no secret, so I can say it, but one of my favorite characters to write is Trevor, and it's because he's funny, he's fun. And so I have my favorite characters that I really love to write, and I love to write Elora, but anytime I have Trevor come onto the scene, I'm just thinking, oh, this is going to be fun. So there's some fun characters in there. There's some humor in there. And like I said, there's some romance, and it's interesting too, because one thing Elora learns is that there's choice, right? And because she's been so apathetic and just so rigid, and you know, they have this tunnel vision. And when she discovers that she gets to choose, that she has agency to make decisions, and it really explodes her world, I think you would say. And not even that, but just figuring out, oh my gosh, what am I feeling? Is this love? You know, just discovering what is love.
She, along with the agency concept, she also learns consequences, which that's kind of highlighted, at least in book two. Like I said, I'm nearly done with book two, and there's a lot of that where like she's like, I'm gonna go with my gut, and sometimes that's good and necessary, and sometimes not so. Sometimes you go, oh, and what I did just affected you in this other way, or oh, maybe I should have thought that through, or I didn't have all the information. And she has to go through that process. I like that. I was actually going to say, between the two of you, so you both have strong heroines as the lead, and they have a lot of similarities, especially in book one for both of you.
Nice.
So if you like one, you'll like the other.
Nice.
But yeah, I kind of like that. That seems to kind of be a theme. Like I wouldn't call Ruth's books dystopian, kind of more in the fantasy genre.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the same truths prevail through both of them. So I really like that. As not an author.
I'm not author yet. Right.
Because I don't finish anything. Yeah.
Hey, that was me for like the first 26 years of my life. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Just write novellas, then you don't have to make them long.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Maybe
you'll
you'll start writing short things, because I can't write short things to save my life. So, there you go.
Well, that's you start the thing, and then you have to explain the thing, and then you like a character so much that you're like, let's write a story about them. Yeah. That's
The thing I will say about this series is that I'm setting it up to where it will wrap up, but there will be series that if I ever say I want to come back to that, it can branch off into something new and discover a whole new world of something new. And so I do like that, even though you'll be able to read the final book and feel like it's complete. There's characters that can definitely have their own storyline and their own series, even if I wanted to do that.
That's very cool. Oh, really quick before we go. So we have the link on our website, and it'll be on whatever else you've got too. Link to your Amazon. At one point on there were other books, and then I read is that like in the back of the book or something? Yeah,
Probably.
where it talks about they were published before under different titles. Is that correct? And so, like, at first I saw it and I'm like, oh, she's done lots of Genesis. Which Genesis books are we doing? And then I was like, oh, it's the same one.
So I rebranded. So basically, after publishing the first and the second book, I, as an indie author, I just thought, I'm just going to do what I want to do and not market research, why not? And though my first covers, I loved those, they were not to market. And so as an indie author, you really have to make sure that you do your homework and you're having covers that when people look at them, they say, this is how this makes me feel. So I want it because it looks like a sci-fi, or it looks like it is. I mean, everything has a specific feel, vibe, look to it, right? I actually have them. I published them as Genesis Awakened, is Genesis Rising. The third book, I can't even remember what the third book was going to be, Genesis something, but I decided to redo them. So this is what they used to look like. You can't hardly see that. That's actually an old one. And then the second book. So they kind of had a similar feel, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of similar feel, but
Yeah. And then I
discovered. Yeah, I was just gonna hold them up.
Yeah.
But when you look at these, you feel like, okay, that's dystopian, or it just has a completely different feel to it. So yeah, renamed them, rebranded them, same story.
I did the same thing. That's so weird.
That's true. I kept telling everybody.
I have my series with the old series name on our website, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed that. After we talked about it last time, I was like, which one did I put up there? The old ones.
Yeah, I waited and checked. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the old one.
Yeah, I'll be fixing that.
And because I haven't really advertised and done a huge push yet for my books, because I wanted to get at least 3 out before I really pushed it. I figured, well, it's probably okay to rebrand and change the titles, and then I can do a really big push and just go from there. But yeah, I kind of have a disclaimer, like previously published as this, and then I've removed them from Amazon. So hopefully they're not showing up still, but maybe they are.
I don't think they do now. I just noticed that when I first went over to the link, and I was like, oh, she's got a bunch of stuff. And then it cleaned up, and I was like,
yeah.
So
books disappeared.
Yeah. So in case there's someone out there that's confused, it's the same book.
Well, then that means there's special copies out there of like the original ones. And anybody has those special first books, you're like, really rare someday when you're like,
I have that. I have that of Ruth, and then I think at least one of these is also one of the so my sister Stephanie, we're related because of a couple of marriages. My sister Stephanie gave me, I think it's the first one, maybe even the second one, and she's like, these are like the rough copies. I'm like, I will take it.
Rough copies.
I'll do it. There's like, I think I'm giving things away now, but there's like, I was gonna see if I could find any really quick. There's like a spot in here, a couple spots in here where it's like in pen, like, and like the right thing written in.
Yeah, because you see, I ordered copies to do like an author signing, and then I was reading through and saw a few typos I missed because, out of 80,000 words, you can't catch all the typos. Yeah. So aggravating. Yeah. So I basically said, I have a copy, Stephanie. If she doesn't care to have a few typos, and then I'm going to fix them and republish.
Yeah. Well, and I have that from Ruth too, because like I said, I was a beta tester for a while. And so as soon as they would, as soon as I could get a published copy, I'm like, let's do it. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute. That one has like whatever mistakes. I'm like, good. Like, I like that. Good. There are some of us out there that are like, I have the original.
And it's missing a few periods.
Right.
It's super cool. So when you were talking about your character and your world, it kind of made me think a little bit of The Giver and some of the things they did with that. If you know how a lot of times when they pitch a movie or they like,
If you like this,
if this meets this, like, what would you say your book is if you had to do that?
I would say it could be like Divergent married to The Giver. They had a baby.
Had a baby.
Mhm.
Yep, there you
You
go.
know, you know, because they're totally bad A, like the Divergent, they're totally bad A and can do all these cool things as far as like, I don't know, they have major skills, right? In Divergent. And then in The Giver, they kind of have that controlled world where it's black and like if you watch the movie, it's like black and white, and then he sees color and he sees like the world for what it is.
Yeah.
All these things that have been hidden, and he's like, what? So I would say it's those two married together. So
That's a good description. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, when I first started reading it, so I'm also part of a book club. And when I do a lot of reading these days. When I first started reading it, I'm like, this is kind of almost reminiscent of like a not so hopeless 1984, except that then it goes a wildly different direction, which I kind of appreciate because I feel like 1984 didn't go anywhere. But that's just me. But my husband's like, but if you had just read that book, is that what you would have compared it to? And I'm like, maybe not. But now that I have read it, I see like a little bit of stuff that I go, oh, that's like, I see similarities. Mm-hmm. Again, kind of that main concept where like the same theme, the ultimate control theme, and how that's just inherently not right. Like we can see that it's not right. Even when you don't understand that you're capable of individual thought, you still have the innate concept in your soul that this isn't right. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I like where all of the other books that you mentioned take it more than 1984, but that was just because I had just read that like a couple months ago. I was like, oh, I see it.
Yeah, I have even compared it to 1984. And when I first did my first publish, it was like when I would you assign keywords, you can assign keywords or what is it like? And that was one of the books, 1984 as well. So
yeah,
interesting.
And then monsters.
There
you go. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun getting to know you and getting to know about your books. When is the third book officially coming out?
Thursday, the 31st, March 31st. So it's available on Amazon. It's paperback, ebook. At some point, I think I'm going to put them wide, so they should be available on a lot more platforms. But for now, it's Amazon. And I will be doing like a knockdown of the first book. And then when I launch on Thursday, there will be a little bit of a knockdown on the first book so that you can get that and then get started and get the second and third book.
Cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. Because it's very fun. I've been telling my husband about it, and he's not a reader. He's like, tell me about it. And then he's like, we should make a movie of it. I'm like, dude, okay. I mean, sure, why not?
I'd probably cry if that happened.
Beautiful day of my life.
I know.
That'd be great.
But Ruth, I know what we're gonna do. But yeah, I told my 16-year-old about it, and actually she's like, when I get done with this, she's like, and then I can take this, and then you need to finish so that I can take that. And then when you get the third one, I can take. I'm like, okay.
All right. So, plan. Yeah, there you go.
So the 40-year-olds and the 16-year-olds, and it really does appeal to pretty much everybody.
Too. I tried to make sure that it was, I didn't put unnecessary gore in there. I mean, there are some shocking things in there, but I wanted to make sure that if a parent had their 14 or 15-year-old read it, they wouldn't think, what are you reading? Oh my goodness. Like, oh, this is terrible. So it is definitely written for any age, making sure that it's clean, I would say.
Yep. Yeah. Romance, but not smut. Action, but not gore, or even a little bit of violence, but not like bloody,
Not
like,
the Hunger
ridiculous.
Games violence.
Yeah. So, yeah, I kind of like it. A little bit of, I guess I'll say magic, kind of like, I don't know. In my mind, magic is anything that you don't immediately like understand. Like, a straw is not magic to me, but maybe it is to somebody, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so while I wouldn't categorize it as like straight up Harry Potter magic, a little bit of that, like discovering the world anew, discovering something that you didn't know existed before.
Right.
That I think speaks to pretty much everyone. That's what we're looking for. So,
Okay. Well, I think that's all for now. Is there anything else you want to add at all?
I don't think so. It was fun. So I appreciate you having me. It's under R.K. Lee. And happy reading, I guess.
Yay, congratulations.
The fourth one comes out.
Books. That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah. I'll say when the fourth one comes out, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Have a few more interviews under our belt and know what we're doing.
Edition or something.
Perfect.
Okay. So sort of funny that we talked about Divergent, because I was actually thinking that would be my pick for next time we do our book to movie thing, because I have strong opinions about this movie and the book, like really strong. So is that something you would want to do, Rae?
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Down for that? Okay. All right. So I guess that's what we'll do next time on Paperback Flicks. But for now, I'm Ruth Craddock, and that's that lady. That's what you say, your name, and you say, and I'm
I know.
the co-host.
I'm Rae Davidson.
She's Rae Davidson. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.